Welcome to my Doceri presentation of adding unlike things. This is an example of how you can add audio to your Doceri presentations. Let's start by trying to add 2 chickens and 1 duck. As such, these things are unlike as they are stated, and so this is problematic. But if we instead talk about the 2 chickens and 1 duck as like things, in this case birds, we can add 2 birds plus 1 bird to get 3 birds. And this is a concept that students can easily grasp. So if we move on to talk about this as it relates to fractions, we can look at and see that the green fraction on the left represents 3 out of 8 parts, and the fraction on the right, the purple fraction, represents 1 out of 6 parts. And these, as such, represent unlike things. Well, the same thing can be said about these fractions as with the birds. If we make these like things, then we can add them together. But by making them like things, we have to make them similar in size. So we did that by listing our multiples of 6 and 8, which are the number of pieces these fractions are broken apart into currently. So we start by finding our first multiple of 8 is 8. And from there we found many other multiples of 8. We can also find multiples of 6. And we continue on for a bit here. Now looking at our multiples of both 8 and 6, we can start to identify common multiples. In fact, there is one there, 48. And we can get that by multiplying our denominators together. 6 times 8 makes 48, so that would then be a multiple of both of them. However, this is not the least common multiple, and there in fact is one smaller than that, which is 24. So we could use either of these to create like fractions. In this case, let's go ahead and use 24 as our least common denominator. So how do we get to 24? Well, we can take 8 parts and multiply that by 3. Doing the same thing to our numerator, our equivalent fraction now becomes 9/24. On the other side, we have to multiply 6 by 4 to get 24 parts. And doing that to the numerator, our equivalent fraction is 4/24. So now we have 24ths and 24ths, 9 of which on the left and 4 of which on the right. And we can add these together to get 13/24. Let's look at another example. Here again we just have a fraction on the left and on the right that are different size pieces, and we can see this by comparing denominators. And since these are different denominators, they are unlike things. Well, we can make them like things by again finding the least common denominator, in this case 15. Well, we do this by multiplying the 3 times 5 to get 15, so we must do the numerator by 5 as well to find an equivalent fraction. On the other side, we multiply 5 by 3 to get 15, so we must multiply its numerator by 3. And our new fractions become 10/15 and 9/15. In this case, when we add them together, we get 19/15, which, as our students already know, this is an improper fraction, and thus must be changed into a proper fraction, namely 1 whole with 4 parts left over out of the 15. Yet another example we could look at is 1/3 plus 1/9. In this case, again, we have unlike things that we are seeking to add together. This one becomes much easier when we see that we only have to change one of our fractions to make it like the other fraction, because 9 is the least common denominator. And we can add 3/9 then plus 1/9 to get 4/9. In one final example, here we have 4/8 and 1/5. Again, these are unlike things, and so to add them we must make them like each other. In this case, we can find that 40 is the lowest common denominator, and we can add 20/40ths and 8/40ths to get 28/40ths. However, 28/40ths we know is not in simplest form, and we can reduce by dividing that by 4 to get 7/10. From here, we can have students work on some guided practice, some independent practice, or we can post homework. And that is it. Thank you for enjoying this Doceri presentation.